Starting with another wet and wet sky. So I wet my paper with clear water. I generally use a mop brush because it holds a lot of water. And then I immediately drop in a very light wash of raw sienna just to give that warm glow to the clouds. Then I choose a bit of a stronger wash of raw sienna. Just picked up a little bit more pigment there on my brush and then drop this into the wet area of the clouds. Now I keep adding stronger and stronger pigment, more raw sienna, probably a little bit of yellow in there as well, and gradually build up the glow of the clouds. As you can see, I'm using a lot of sort of swooping motions just so that I get a bit of energy and a bit of freedom into my brush strokes. Because I'm working wet in wet and there's a lot of water now on the paper, my colours are fading out and getting quite light, so I have to continuously drop in stronger pigment so that I don't end up with a weak first wash, because I don't really want to go back into those areas later on. I've let it dry just a little bit. It's still damp, the paper. And now I'm going to go in with my sky colour. I start off with a very light grey that's tipping into blue, so that's cerulean, a bit of lavender and some raw sienna just to neutralise it a little bit. And I'm building up and I'm filling in the gaps now between my clouds. Now it's time to add some shadows to the actual clouds themselves, and I just strengthened my grey with adding a bit of ultramarine to it and some burnt sienna. And because we're painting straight over the raw sienna that's already there, that will get quite a warm colour and also should unify the shadows with the sunlit areas of the clouds. And I'm going back and forth between the cloud shadows and the sky colour so that I can kind of balance the two out and make sure that I get the values right. So I've gone back to my purple mix or my blue-grey, and then go back into my dark shadows of the clouds, and then just keep bouncing between the two until I get a sky that looks convincing. And the only way to get that right is through practice, as with probably every aspect of watercolour or painting in general. You gotta just paint a lot and try different things to get a feeling for which colours work together. Especially for skies, you want to create sort of a harmonious colour scheme. And I said I wasn't going to go and touch up the yellow bits of the clouds, but clearly I'm doing that now, because as I'm putting in the darker values of the clouds and the shadows, I can see that my golden areas of the clouds are just a little bit weak, and that's why we try and keep the painting as damp as possible for as long as possible, because as long as it's not dried, we can continue to manipulate what's already on the page without it being a glaze. If I let this completely dry and then go over the top, of course it's possible, but I find it is a little bit harder, and it also loses a bit of its freshness. The sky, I'd like to paint in one go and have it finished and then not actually touch it after I've let that first sky wash completely dry. So I'm trying to get it right first time. I could have left it there, but looking at it and anticipating what it's going to look like when it's completely dry, I decided to add in just that a little bit of extra value into a couple of the areas of the sky. I've let the painting completely dry because now it's time for the ocean to go in. And I mixed a very dark version of that last purple that I've created for the clouds, because again I want to make sure that we have a bit of harmony going on through the painting and not use too many different colours. So I generally always use the same set of base colours. So for the ocean I mixed up ultramarine blue, quinacridone rose and some burnt sienna, which is a pretty standard mix for a nice warm purple. And then depending if you put in more blue or more red, you can shift it either way. And I've left out some of the reflections from the sun. At this point, I'm not really all that happy, to be quite honest, on how that dry brush worked. I would have loved to create a lot more sparkle. Two things: I used the wrong brush, and I also had too much water in my mix, so it wouldn't really give us the nice scratchy feeling and the sparkle and the glitters of the sky. But the end result I was still happy with, and that just shows that, don't give up on a painting. When you're painting, you always go through this phase where you're not happy with where things are going, and you're kind of going, oh, I want to do this again. But finish the painting, see where it's taken you, and if you're really that unhappy with it, then just start again. I also didn't get the waterline the way that I wanted. It should have been hard edges with some reflections on there if you compare that to the reference photo. So for now I'm trying to just soften that water's edge and see if I can change that later on. And then I'm lifting out some colours just to get a bit more depth into the water, creating that illusion of the light hitting the water. So I decided to put in the beach, the sand, and hoping that will kind of give me a bit of a clue of what to do with the water. It's all pretty wet at this point, so I can't really create any hard edges. It's going to be hard, so I'm just layering some different tones into my beach, lifting and adding. And there is no real science to this or a three-step process. This is where you're on your own, gotta follow your intuition. And trying to create interesting textures and depth. The ocean's dry enough for me to put in the headland that extends into the ocean. I paint that sort of composition quite frequently. I find it extremely satisfying. I'm using an even darker version of the ocean colour. The important part here again is values, not colours. The headland's got to be darker than the ocean, but it pays off to use the same colours you've used elsewhere in the painting, again, just to create that colour harmony across the one painting. I've now added a bit of quinacridone gold into this headland mix to add in the trees that are closer to us. And again, the purpose is to get a colour gradient in from the tip of the headland to when it comes closer in on the left side. I rarely paint just with one solid colour. I'm always trying to vary the colour. And where previously I lifted off some of the colour from the headland to create the effect of the sun behind it, it was a bit too strong, so I'm covering that back up again. I'm happy with the background for now, letting that sit. I can come back to my foreground of the ocean And I want to break up that reflection there a little bit, just to add a bit of more realism to it, makes it a bit more believable. So waves always have that bit of shadow right in front of them because it's elevated. The sky is completely dry now. Whatever, dampness would have been remaining there is now completely dried out. So I can come in, just add a few more clouds right over the horizon. And that's a mix with a bit of lavender, which has got some titanium white in it, so that's slightly opaque. That's what lavender is great for, because you can cover up some of the colours and values behind it. Now the camera has got a bit of a distortion there, and also my paper is a bit warped. That's why the horizon line looks like it's sloping down to the right. It doesn't look like that in the finished painting, but yeah, filming paintings is always a little bit challenging to get it exactly to look like what I'm looking at. But the purpose really is for you to see how I've gone about painting this pretty simple sunset sky. A few trees there in the distance, a little bit of details just here and there to create a bit more depth and realism to the painting. And just those last few touches is really what it needed to create the illusion of the sun reflecting on the water. I'm going to leave it there and time to peel off the tape. I'm happy where I landed with the painting. It's a pretty simple composition, but there were still plenty of challenges in there for me, creating that sky, the different values and the glow of the clouds in the late afternoon sun. That's why I kept the foreground relatively simple so we can focus on the sky. Thanks for watching, and please leave a comment if you enjoyed this video.